Hello, it's Crafty Carol here with part 2 of my heat embossing tips videos. Part 1 you can find on my YouTube channel or on my website, and this is a few more ideas about how to use heat embossing in slightly different ways. So just a recap for tools and things. We need to make sure you've got a decent heat gun, that you have a Versamark stamp pad. If you want to, the ink refill, because you can do things with that, it's useful, and also the stamp embossed powders. Now, Stampin' Up do two sets of 3 lots of embossing powder. One, and I've only got my big things here because when I get the powders, they arrive in the little pots like this, and I put them in the big containers because I find it a lot easier to use. So the metal ones, the metallic group of powders, gold, silver and copper, and the plain ones, and after the last video I have now got my clear in a container, clear, white and black as the basics. So there are 2 sets of those, so there's 6 powders altogether if you want, or just buy the 2. So last week we talked about several ways to emboss. So the first is to actually emboss the outline of an image, which you can then colour in. This was putting some embossing powder on top of silver foil. I'm going to show that technique again slightly differently. This was embossing a piece of white card using the Versamark pad. Use that as the background for those ones. This one again, embossing the flowers at the back with clear embossing powder, and this one again embossing the outline in a different colour, gold this time, with embossed flowers on the background. So that was last time. I talked last time about how you can emboss the outline of an image and then colour it in, or use the stamps on top of it, which I've done there. But you can also do the same with solid images. So this time I've actually going to use these solid images from the Sending Smiles bundle that has the dies to go with it. Some lovely flowers and plants, and you can make up all sorts of different sprays and things with those. So I've just chosen 2 of the solid stamps here, and I'm going to stamp them onto my piece of card. So remember, stamping on card, I must use my embossing buddy, because I only want the embossing powder to go where I mean it to go. So get my Versamark pad, and I'm going to do these in 2 because I'm going to show you how I can use 2 different embossing powders to make an image. So I'm going to stamp the leaves at the base there. So that's my first one, and I'm going to emboss those with the silver embossing powder. While trying not to get it all over the desk. I always still manage to get some embossing powder over the desk, no matter how I try, but at least these containers do help a bit. So that's the silver embossed. I'm just going to go and emboss that. So there is the embossing done, and hopefully you can see the lovely shine of the silver on that. And remember, when you're using a heat gun, do use it, hold it about a couple of inches away from your image and move it around. Keep moving it. Don't focus the heat on one place, because it will warp and damage your card if you do that. So having done that, I'm going to put the flower on top. Again, just stamping it in Versamark, and this time I'm going to use my gold powder. So there we have a really simple, purely embossed image. So I've got a gold flower on a silver stem, and I can also emboss the gold foil. Now, if you remember, we did this last time. I showed you how to use the Versamark pad, but I'm going to do it again and use a different colour this time. So this is silver foil, and I'm going to use the Versamark pad just fairly lightly over it. Not going to cover all of it, and going to use my gold again. So I didn't need to use the buddy on that, of course, because I'm going all over it. So it doesn't matter if there's a bit of grease where this is going to stick, because I want it to be sticking randomly everywhere anyway. So I've done that quite quickly, and you can see I've actually got more coverage than I really want on that. So what I can do is I can use my brush, and this can give another really rather nice effect, just to brush off some of the extra. I don't really want all of that on there, I want it a bit more empty, so that's more the effect I wanted. So another little tip, you can just use a brush like that. So I'm going to bring it a bit closer again so you can see. Hopefully again you can see the shimmer on that. So I've got the silver foil showing through some gold strips, which is, again, I rather like it as an effect, and I can use that as a background for my flower. So here's the one I've already completed using that same technique. So I've just stuck my panel on top of my silver foil with my gold embossing on. I've gold embossed my sentiment and stuck it on with some dimensionals, so you can see, really simple but really effective card. And just to add to it, I gold embossed one of the little flower on the corner of the envelope as well. So the next technique I want to show you, you don't always have to stamp on card or paper. You can actually use the specialty papers, and you could actually use, I've got a bit of green somewhere as well, these are the lovely in colour shimmer papers that are available, and they're vellum, and so you can stamp on vellum as well. So I'll just show you that, and this time I'm going to use the white will I get one out of this? Ooh, bit tight. Let's see if it's better that way. Yes, it is. So I'm going to do a leaf, and I'm going to do, let's have a pink flower. There we go. And I'm actually going to use my white embossing powder for these. You could use clear, you could use another colour if you wanted, but I think this gives rather a nice effect, and I'll show you the card I've actually made up with one in a second. Let me just show you how these look. Okay, now you'll notice I didn't bother with the embossing buddy on that. If I wanted to leave them on these, I would, but I'm cutting these out. So this one, for example, I have got some powder sticking where I don't really want it to. So either I can use, I can just use my tiny brush to get rid of the bits I don't want, like that. You can always clean up one before, always do it, of course, before you heat it. But I'm going to cut these out, so I don't actually, it doesn't matter about those bits because it's being cut out. So again, I'm just going to heat those to show you the final result. So there you have the leaf and the flower just in white. Hopefully you're getting those in shot. I'm not sure where when I'm holding them up to the camera, I'm never quite sure exactly where I am, but hopefully you can see those. And the Sending Smiles set does come with the sending dies, and you can cut those out and just layer them up on something similar and form a nice little card that way. So I've used my Evening Evergreen as the base, and I've used another piece of this the polished pink shimmer paper as a layer, and then I've put stuck this bit down flat, the leaves down flat, and I've raised my flower on dimensionals. And that just to me is a rather simple but really nice card, just as a little note card for somebody that you want to send a message to. So remember, you can stamp on vellum, and you can stamp in all of the different, you can use all the different colours. Let me just show you, perhaps with this one, let me show you what it would look like with gold on the vellum. So we'll just use this particular stamp, stamp it in the Versamark, and we'll just use the gold to show you what that looks like on the vellum. So this one is the gold on the where am I holding that? There we go, with the camera. This is the gold on the, oh, what's that colour called? Pale papaya, on the pale papaya glimmer paper. And that's beautiful. Again, there's a die that goes with that from the contour dies, and you can make that into a centerpiece on a card as well. The next tip I want to show you is using the white embossing powder. White is the most wonderful embossing powder. You might think, oh, there's not that many uses for it. There are loads of uses for that particular embossing powder. So this time I am actually going to stamp the image, but then use white embossing powder on white card. That's strange, you might say. Why am I doing that? All will become clear. So let me, as usual, embossing buddy, because I don't want the powder anywhere other than where I want it, you see what I mean? So that is just the white powdered image. There. Trying to work out if I'm holding it under the camera. So there is the white flower, just embossed on white card, embossed in white. Doesn't look very much at all, does it? However, magic can happen. So I've got one of the lovely blending brushes, and I'm just going to pick up the colour. And then just very gently start to move it over the image. And when using the blending brushes, you just want to apply gentle pressure. Don't press down. It doesn't need to be pressed down. We just need to pick up the colour and gradually add more and more until we're happy with it. But can you see the magic that's now happening? My chair's creaking as I'm doing this. Don't know if you can hear that. Right. So that's really enough for me to show you what I'm talking about here. So can you see how now I've got my colour behind my image there? And although I haven't got too much colour on the top, if you feel you have got a lot of colour on the top, if you just rub it down with a tissue, it will bring out all the white again and take out any extra colour. So that is rather lovely, and I love this effect, and it makes the most beautiful card. So here's one I did earlier, just made it into a note of thanks again, matching my colours there. I've used Gorgeous Grape as my layer. Simple card, again, very effective. While we're on with the white embossing powder, I want to show you something else you can do. And I'm going to use a background stamp here. So I do want to, although I'm going to cover the whole thing, it's the image I want, so I do need to use my embossing buddy over my piece of cardstock. That doesn't look a very square piece of cardstock. Let's use this bit. There, that's better. So I'm going to use the embossing buddy over my cardstock. You can just see the white powder from the embossing buddy there. That's what you want. And then I'm going to use this. This is one of our background stamps, so you do need your giant block for it. I don't need the whole stamp Versamarked because I'm only going to use the bit that this will cover. So I'm just going to Versamark up an area of the stamp. Now, these stamps are quite unwieldy to use, so rather than lift the stamp and place it on my card, I'm going to take my card to the block. Just put it on the block and press it down all over, just gently. Firmly but gently. You don't want to press into the stamp, but you do want it to pick up the Versamark that you've placed on the stamp. So now that's my Versamarked piece. I can get my embossing powder. This stamp is not actually a current one. I haven't got any of the current background stamps, interestingly. I've only got some of the old ones that I like to keep because they're ones I use, and this one is one I really do use. So you can see, let's get the extra off. You can see on here I've just got a couple little bits where I don't really want them. There we go. So that is the crackle paint one, and I just love it. I think it's a gorgeous background. So again, I can heat this. It's lovely and sunshiny today, which I love because it makes it a lot easier to see if you've missed any from heating it. So that is the effect I get when I've used the crackle paint. Rather nice white on white. And we can do the same thing with an image. So as I've already doused that with my embossing buddy, I'll use this flower again from the Colour and Contour set. One of my favourite flowers, actually. So again, I can stamp that in the Versamark and cover it in the embossing powder. And this is one of my very favourite ways to use white embossing powder, which is simply white on black. And you can use those then to make a lovely sympathy card. So I've just used this as the background. I've used one of the old sentiments, which I've cut out using an older die punch as well. Put a little border of black card, put it on a border of black card, and I've used the white embossed flower just as a focal point at the bottom of the card. So try this one. It really is a lovely technique. Just white on black, beautiful, like monochrome cards. I like them. I did say last time that I was going to show you. I talked about how to use, and I used it on this card. I stamped the flower and then I actually put clear embossing powder on it. But I talked about how you absolutely have to work quickly because the ink dries so quickly and it won't pick up much embossing powder. But there is a way around that. And it's using our beautiful, just move that out of the way, there we go, our beautiful Stamparatus machine, which is the most wonderful piece of equipment. Everybody should have one. So I'm just going to embossing buddy this piece of card. There we go. And again, I'm going to use ink to emboss this card, emboss this image. So I'm going to have my image roughly in the center here. So I'll put it on there. Oops. Pick it up with my plate, and then I am ready to go. So hopefully that is just about in view. Can't get the whole machine in view at once, but you'll get the idea. And the key with this, I am going to ink it, so it's going to be clear embossed over a coloured ink. But, and this is the big but, this is the secret technique that means I'm going to give myself time. And the secret technique involves using the Versamark first. So I'm going to Versamark up the flower, and you can see now why I'm using my Stamparatus, because I'm going to stamp twice and I need it to stamp in the same place. So I'm going to stamp with Versamark like that. Still has a little bit of the colour on actually from when I just used it, but then I can get my ink pad and I can ink it up with my ink pad. Stamp again so I know my image is on top of it. Now you can see the depth that the ink has put onto that, but because it's got Versamark underneath it, I'm not in such a rush to get to the embossing powder. So I can now take my time to get my embossing powder and stick it on, and it will stick better because of the Versamark. So there, and of course it seems to have vanished because we've, I'll just get rid of this so you've got room. Seems to have vanished because the powder has just covered up the image. But if I heat that now, you'll see the effect. So as you can see, as I've heated that, it's come through. It's now nice and shiny because it's got the clear embossing powder on it, and it's a really nice deep colour. So on this piece here, what I did was I did the centre flower in exactly the way I've just done. So as you can see, it's the same. And then on the outside, I've just stamped just with the ink, the flower without any embossing. So you can make it a focal point. You could do this as a background to a card and just have a background. This is obviously a small card if I use this, but it would make a nice card just with a sentiment. If you use that as a whole background, you could do a whole piece for a normal size card or just for a little 3x3 card. This would fit. Then you could use that as the background just with a focal point, and all it needs then is a little sentiment. I'd probably have it that way around, little sentiment across the bottom, and you've got a card. So that is how to use ink embossing with added Versamark, I suppose, to make your clear embossing easier. And then finally, I just wanted to show you one more card, which is this one. And this is where I've just combined, this was using the Versamark swiped across a piece of white cardstock, embossed with gold embossing powders. I've just cut out 3 plain flowers with a punch. I've used a little centre gold glitter dot in the middle. I've embossed, you can see the shiny on it, but I've embossed the sentiment, and I've got myself a lovely little thank you card that I can then write in. And again, I have done a little bit of embossing on the envelope, so I've got some gold on the envelope too. I hope you've enjoyed these ideas. So we have, not in any particular order, as they say when they're giving results on result shows, using a background stamp to do a background, and I've used white on black. You could of course use gold on white, or white on silver on black, or copper on very vanilla. Any of those things work really well. So using a background stamp and embossing to get a lovely background. Embossing an image white on black, nice and plain. Again, you could use any other colour on any other cardstock. Using white embossing on white card, and then using a blender brush to put colour behind it. Then we've used stamping and embossing on vellum of both white and of gold. Here they are. And we've also revised about, this is using a different colour on the background. So this is gold embossing on silver foil, and using solid stamps just embossed as an image is another way to use embossing. So I hope you like all of those tips. I hope you've enjoyed these videos. Let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about in future videos. If you've liked these videos, then please do subscribe to the channel, and I will see you again soon. Remember, you can go to craftycarolscards.co.uk to sign up for my emails, where you'll get all the news and where you'll find my blog with all of my videos and instructions and everything else you need. Thanks for joining me today. Bye for now.